What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. On this episode of the podcast, we're going to look at pain. We're going to look at it in a little bit more detail. And what I want to do is, the goal of this podcast is to help change your perspective on, as you look into the future, and I guess with the way medicine is going, with the way physiotherapy is going, how we need to reconsider the idea of pain and treating pain and managing it, and when we should be fearful, when we should not. And I guess the approach to how you should deal with the issues and the pains that you're suffering with at the moment. And I want you to leave this episode with a better idea of how your body responds and why it responds in such a way. The reason being is that, I guess, as you work with people one-to-one, as I do, you start to get a better understanding of different things, and you get a better understanding of the person themselves and how their reactions and their actions can cause certain patterns and certain issues to develop. And something that I see often on social media is it's a reductionist view of pain. It's a reductionist view of the body. And I think we often miss the mind-body connection and the interconnectedness of the whole thing, because it's too easy to start to point at certain things and say, this is the reason that you have pain, or this is the reason that you have pain. And then we can break it down and say, well, mechanically, because the hip is offline, it should then cause the knee to give trouble, which in line should cause the ankle. But it doesn't generally match up, because if that's the case, you have to have pain at every single kink in the chain, if we're going to look at it that way. So if the hip was offline, the knee should be acting up, the ankle, the big toe. Then you should have some part of the lower spine. Then you should have upper spine, and then it should go to neck, it should go to shoulder. So there's a lot more to it, and I think that if we have this reductionist view and biomechanical view of pain too much, you're going to get caught in the system, and you're going to get caught going around in circles. And as I said, as you work with people one-to-one and you look at what the research is saying, you can see where it is aligned more. You can start to pick up on certain patterns. You really can. The reason I love to work with chronic injuries more so than acute injuries, I love both of them, but chronic injuries are something that they tickle my fancy, you could say, in a way. I'm a lot more interested in them, because the recurring nature of an injury means that there's a lot more going on than just the physical attributes of that issue and the physical damage that could be caused. And I also think that a lot of people are underserved when it comes to chronic type injuries, because they're treated like it's an acute issue. And what therapists will often do is they'll try to isolate these issues down to the way you move. They'll look at your range of motion of a joint, or they'll look at the posture that you're holding, and they'll say, okay, therefore only one area is going to be assessed, and we're going to focus on that and try to fix it. And what this does is it causes us to look at the body, which is extremely complex. It's a extremely interconnected system, and we start to forget about that element to it, and it just slowly but surely becomes more and more and more reductionist. And when you look at the older forms of medicine, before the scientific method really came to the fore, they did have this interconnectedness. And people would say, well, the lifespan was shorter and this and that and the other. And it's true, there's that definitely was there. And the scientific method has really pushed forward medicine and really developed our understanding of it. But we often lose sight then of the things that we can't measure, and we say that, well, that's more difficult to measure, so instead we'll focus on what we can do and what we can change and what we understand through statistics. And I had this conversation with Dr. Aura Goldman recently, and I will put the podcast out soon in the next couple of weeks, where we talk about why this view actually has led us to more of, like, let's say, more chronic issues developing out of that, because we are looking at the body as this mechanical issue, and we're forgetting that the mind and the social environment and our environments and our community and everyone around us is also actually playing a role into what we're feeling. So the mind's body approach is dropped, and instead we start to isolate the issue. We start looking for very specific causes. And as I said before, we do think of the mind and body as two separate entities. We think of pain as this feeling that must have a direct cause. It has to have a direct physical issue, or there has to be an injury there. You do begin to realize that pain is a phenomenon that actually occurs within someone's environment. And the more you work with these chronic cases, the more you understand this, that the pain itself, there's a lot more involved in what's going on. So we have to look at pain as there being a biological cause, there's a psychological cause, and there's a social cause as well. And if we focus too much on the biological, because as I said, it's the easiest to measure, you'll notice therapists then saying, okay, you're lacking 20 degrees of what a normal knee should look like. That's good, fix it and you'll be good to go. Then you'll say the hips are forward, so that must be the cause. Their hips are offline, so why wouldn't they have back pain if the hips are offline? Fix this and we should be good. But why then do people suffer with the same issue every couple of weeks and every couple of months? Even if you fix the hips, why do the hips then go offline again? Is it because it's the person's fault? Did they really go offline in the first place? And do we ever ask the question of why does it keep happening? Why do they keep going offline? If that's the case, if that's the real reason, why does it happen? And is there not a position that the body adapts as a result of something else? Is that why the hips are going offline? And is there any other factor that actually could be driving it? What about confidence? What about fatigue? What comes first? Do the hips tilt or does the pain come first? And if so, could the pain be the driver? Are we tilting our hips as an adaptation to get out of it if the pain is a driver? If you injure your shoulder, they generally put you in a sling. But why have they done that? Maybe because it feels like it's a little bit more of a secure position for the shoulder. It reduces the pain. But it is an adaptation to pain. The pain is there, so we put it into a more secure position. And the body feels like, okay, I don't need to give as much pain anymore, so it feels better. That's acutely that happens. Now, if you constantly held your shoulder in that position, as you moved it out of the position, then you would start to notice pain because it gets so comfortable within this limited range. So although working on the adaptation may be beneficial, and we may find that you can gain a lot from it, it is a short-term adaptation. And it doesn't answer the question as to why the pain keeps coming back and why the body keeps shifting into this hip tilted position where one is offline, as they say. So once we understand that, we need to begin to look a little bit more holistically at these types of pains. Because if we continue just to blame certain signs on the reason that we have pain, the signs will keep coming back and we can keep blaming it, and they will help at the start to start fixing them or start improving them. But that it's not going to be a solution longer term. And to understand this better, we have to start to look outside of just the physical. How the psychological is actually contributing, or how your environment is contributing. Are we stressed? If so, how can we work on reframing it until it actually passes? How can we work on reframing that stress? Because we need to understand that stress itself is more of a perception than an actual, say, physical energy. I always use the analogy of the dog. If you go into a house and there's a dog on your couch, it's your dog, that's excellent. But if it's not your dog, your stress increases significantly. It's a stray dog. Who wants that on their couch? Random one. Just the fleas alone. Think about that. And then obviously the fact that it's a stray dog as well. So nothing has changed there. The animal is still there, but the perception has changed because your system has recognized that could be a threat. So it ramps everything up. And that's where the stress comes out of. And that's why I talk about stress being a perception. It's more so how comfortable, how confident you are. How much do you feel you have what's going on under control? All of these other elements contribute then to that stress. And that's why reframing makes such a difference to stress. That's one part of it. When we know the body's stressed, we know we're going to get more pain. So, as I said, if you are stressed, How can you work on reframing it until it passes? Or have you, as a person, become so chronically stressed with everything in your environment being a threat, everything being a danger, that you find it difficult to actually get into the resting state? Not you specifically, but your system has adapted to being in this stress state. So now your system has found that it's more difficult to get into a resting state. And this is just coming back to basic stress and adaptation of the body. Of if you go for a run, you get better at running. If you don't go for a run, you get worse at running. That's just stress and adaptation. The same thing with the system. If you get good at being stressed and find everything fearful and everything scary, you get good at recognizing the fear in everything around you, recognizing the danger. And the other side of it is, if you are very good at getting into this more relaxed state, you get pretty good at it as well, because it is just a parasympathetic and a sympathetic reaction of the system. A vagal tone is how to describe it also. So as you get stuck in this chronically stressed out state and your pain starts to rise, this happens because the body then, and the problem areas that you've had in the past, the injuries or the issues that you've had in the past, will start to flare up because they become more sensitized. And I do have a free guide on this if anyone wants to check it out. It's I'll put it in the description of the podcast. Click the link. You can go in, and it's called Understanding the Root Cause of Chronic Pain. And it'll talk about the burn spot and how these old injuries can kick up and cause your body to, I guess, become more sensitized. But we call it a burn spot because if you touch the burn spot on your skin, it's if you have a burn spot on your skin and you touch it, it's very sore to touch the red spot, but if you touch around it, it's not that bad. Now, when you are chronically stressed and your system is really sensitized, now everything starts to become a burn spot. So any movement or any change in your environment can cause these injuries or old issues to flare up, all of the alarms to go off, give you lots of pain, give you lots of discomfort, but at the same time not actually have a physical cause to the injury. So it puts our system into this high alert reactive state. This is where the majority of flare-ups happen when you are looking at a chronic injury. This is what happens. It's that the system itself becomes extremely alert. It becomes hyper reactive. And then as a result, little things cause big problems. And that is what we need to look at. That's what we need to change. We need to change the reactivity of the system, how it has become this hyper alert system and why it's always giving you pain for very little stimulus. And think of it as a threshold. When you hit the threshold, everything goes off. Alongside that, it's how we react to it after. And that's really step number one to fixing this, is controlling your reaction and improving your reaction. If you can control your reaction, you can kind of blunt that response. But if you let your reaction run wild every single time, the response will only be amplified. And that's when you run into these issues that kick up, or I bent down and picked something up off the ground, my back flared up, and I had to go to bed for the next 3 weeks until I got surgery, where you really didn't fix anything. You just went and looked and said, okay, right, I needed to get surgery because that was the only option. And to be honest, that's a fault of the medical system in the mechanical view of it, where we look at everything as having this mechanical basis. That is a fault of that as well. So it's more about, like, right now I'm just trying to help people spread a little bit of awareness of what the cause could be, and if we address that, how to fix it. Because you get surgery and then people say, oh, it was a failed surgery, because they never addressed the chronically stressed system in the first place. So it doesn't make one bit of difference what surgery you get. They can't. You have to go in and you have to work on that. You have to work on the consciousness. You have to work on your consciousness. You have to work on the nervous system. You have to work on how it reacts. You have to work on your reactions. You have to work on your strength. You have to work on the conditioning, the tolerance. Sounds like a lot of stuff, but you do have to work on all these different factors because they do contribute. And if you want to fix it long term and you want it to stop controlling your life, these are the things that need to be improved. Okay? And people forget them. They miss out on them. They think that they're not contributing. I don't know how many people I've talked to, and then I tell them about this, and then they say, oh, so you're saying my pain is all in my head? Not at all. No, the system is giving you the pain. We can see it, that it's causing you to get into this cropped over position. We can see the tightness there. You can feel the tightness. I don't think you're in here lying about the pain, but there's elements of your conscious mind that are driving it. And if you don't admit to that, if you don't want to admit to that, that's okay. You will continue to go in circles, unfortunately. So there is some hard truths and hard beliefs that you have to look at. And it's not that, then again, it's not that it's all to do with the consciousness, because there is a tolerance, there is a sensitivity aspect to it. But if you are aware of, okay, every time it kicks up, I am taking a load of painkillers and I'm taking a load of anti-inflammatories and I am really catastrophizing. And this is the problem. Making the pain, any small pain, out to be the worst possible pain in your mind when you tell people. That there is the biggest problem. I don't know how this happens all the time. It's like when you have a pain, you want to try to explain to people how severe the pain is. So you amplify it. And as a result of amplifying it, you amplify it in your own mind as well. I don't know how many people have come to me and I said, okay, from 0 to 10, 10 being you have to go to the hospital right now because of how severe the pain is, what is it out of 10? And people would say, it's a 10 out of 10. Like, sure, I understand the point you're trying to make. I understand that the pain is extremely bad. But if 10 out of 10 would mean you have to go to the hospital right now, what are you doing here talking to me if that's how severe the pain is right now? Because at a certain level of pain, we will go to the hospital and we'll go and get that sorted out. Or we'll go and look for something more severe, or we will look for a new action. So that's a really good example. And generally with those people, I've said, okay, grand. I'll say, right, so we'll go through it, we'll talk through everything and we'll work on it. And then in a couple of weeks' time, I'll have to say, you need to address this mindset around the pain. Because if you keep thinking and telling people that it's as severe, even if it is really bad, but if your parameters are to go from 0, as in no pain, to 10, where you have to go to the hospital because it's the most excruciating pain, what is it? And you're telling people every time it's a 10, well, then you have to see that there's a gap there in how you're reacting versus how the measurement is. And once you start to get into them and you kind of talk them through that process and talk them through how it is and how they are talking about the pain, generally then people can come around. They sit with it and they come around and say, okay, right, the pain is actually very annoying. It might be a 6 or 7 out of 10. It's really impacting me. It's impacting my way of life. And that's okay. I understand that. And that's okay. We can work with that. But if you're saying that the pain is you have to go to the hospital right now and you aren't going to the hospital right now, well, then we need to reassess and see what's going on. Okay. And this is where catastrophizing comes over. This is how your mindset really starts contributing, is we start attaching to pain. We look for the pain every day. We get up in the morning and we say, is it there? How bad is it? How severe it is? What am I going to be able to do today? I probably shouldn't go to work today in case it gets any worse. And you have all these ideas and actions and behaviors and you don't realize it, but you are giving the control to it. You're giving your body the control, or the pain, let's say, not even your body, you're giving the pain control. And then you start to feel like the body is fighting against me. It starts to feel like it's not even worth trying anything because I need this done right now. It needs to be fixed right now. And you start to look for short-term solutions where you go get massages, you go get these chiropractic adjustments, you go and you take your painkillers or your anti-inflammatories and you keep increasing the strength of those. You rest and stop doing everything because that, in case the pain gets worse. You decondition, your tolerance lowers. The pain kicks up with little movements. You stop, you rest, you take anti-inflammatories and painkillers, you decondition more. And you're basically, because of your reactions of how your mindset is thinking about the pain and how you're addressing the pain, it continues to get worse and worse and worse and worse. And then our whole system becomes sensitized. And now the pain has a real grip on you. Now it's really controlling you. So there is elements of how you can backtrack from that if you are dealing with this issue and it feels like that resonates. Well, the first step is just recognizing, okay, there's a certain amount of pain that I can deal and handle with. And I will work within that range. And then it's about, okay, I need to make sure that I don't catastrophize and really inhale and make these serious kind of really, really strong reactions to little pain in anticipation of pain. Okay? And then you have to start working on, okay, well, what breathing exercises can I do to calm the system? Am I always looking for pain? Do I need to start using that energy putting it towards something else? And do I have certain things that I know help the pain every time? Am I overthinking it? Am I allowing it to fill my thoughts? Do I have to change that? Do I have to reframe how I look at this and reframe how I train? Remember that our actions and behaviors will start to change as well as we start to avoid it at all costs. And this is when the real problem develops, as I explained before. So this is where I come back to the idea of we need to look at the interconnectedness of the body and the interconnectedness of the mind-body element, and that element of pain, how it doesn't just have to be driven by a physical cause. There's a huge amount of the emotional and the psychological that are going to drive that pain. If we can manage those, as I said before, then you can start to make long-term change. Then you can start to get back into the activities that you love, and you can start taking back that control, and you don't have to hate your body for how it's been reacting to your way of life. So the more we do it, the more we practice it, it'll start to get better each day. Won't be good straight away. There's no quick fix for this. Takes a little bit of time, takes a little bit of consistency, but you can really overcome it, and you can start to get that grip back on it. And as I said, understand, trying to isolate a chronic or recurrent pain down to one specific thing can be problematic because of the above. Instead, it just needs a consistent holistic approach where you're working on the foundations, working on the movements, and not attaching to any one thing too much as we allow the body to start to resolve it. And if that is kind of everything that I want to talk about today, and that's all I'm going to go over, and hopefully leave you with something to think about. If you have to listen back to this, absolutely do. Give it a day or two just to kind of sit in and then listen back to it again, because there is things in here that should resonate with anyone who's dealing with the pain or has dealt with the pain in the past. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from it, it's understand the interconnectedness of the pain, that it's never generally just one physical side to it, that there is more of an emotional side, there's an environmental side, there's a psychological side. And as we address the others, making sure that we're addressing the physical, but then address the others at the same time, that's how you start to improve it and get over it and start to get the control back in your life. If you're struggling with a pain, just shoot me an email if you want to, if you need any help, if you have any questions, at info@themobilitytutor.com. So that's info@themobilitytutor.com. And we can talk about it. We can make a little bit of a plan. We'll talk through what the best option is for you and where you want to go with it and how you would approach that. And generally at the end of the call, I talk about how I work. And if that's something you're interested in, absolutely, we can talk about where you would fit in, and we'll make sure we're a good match for each other. And if not, at least you have a better idea. You have a better plan going forward on what to do. So just email me at info@themobilitytutor.com if that is something that you're interested in. And the last thing I'd ask is, I'm really trying to get this podcast up to 1,000 ratings. It's way, way, way off that right now. Like way off it right now. If you could, I'd love if you scroll up to the top of Spotify or iTunes or wherever you listen to this and you give it a 5-star rating if it was helpful for you and if you took something from it. It just goes a long way in really promoting the podcast and getting it to new audiences and helping me get on more guests as well in future. But that's all from me today. Thank you so much for listening. I really, really appreciate you signing in again. And I hope everything is going well for you. And as I said, if you have any questions, you can follow me on Instagram at RobbieCassidy_, ROBBIECASSIDY_, or you can just write to me, info@themobilitytutor.com. That's all from me today, and I will chat to you all at the same time next week. Have a good one.